Hello, and welcome to Guard Against Fraud and Financial Crime with NICE Actimize on AWS. My name is Amit Jha, Solution Architect, Global Financial Services, Amazon Web Services, and I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, we want to do a quick poll to gauge the NICE Actimize solutions overview and AWS know-how. Moving on to our next poll. Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So today's agenda will be an overview of financial services and AWS. I'll be joined by Mike Wilbrand, Director at NICE Actimize, who will go over the NICE Actimization solutions. And at the end, we'll look at the AWS Advantage NICE Actimize leverages. We will also keep a Q&A section at the end. Our learning objectives for today is to find out how NICE Actimize and AWS can help you eliminate financial losses from money laundering, bribery and corruption, regulatory penalties, how you could decrease your operational cost to investigate and research your internal and external suspicious transactions, how you could leverage advanced analytics and automation to spot existing and emerging patterns of money laundering and bribery, and how you can adapt to changing business needs and stay ahead of regulatory requirements. These are all the explicit learning objectives. Implicitly, you will also know the AWS Advantage and different services that NICE Actimize leverages. So where are we today? A lot is changing. And the change obviously is good, but change is also contributing to a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's several disruptions are happening. And if you see an average lifespan of S&P company, it has shrunk down to 20 years from what it used to be like 60 years at 1960s. And disruption is happening very, very fast. At the same time, companies are spending 2/3 of their IT technology budget onto maintenance activities rather than doing a new investment that can keep them ahead of competition. Lastly, our connected world, social engineering, bot, or other IoT-based devices is empowering a lot of host of bad actors. It could be from a lone hackers to a nation-state espionage, which has led many CEOs to report that they believe their ability to deal with the security, the digital risk, is actually failing to keep pace with the sophistication of the threats. Talking specifically about the financial services landscape, there are significant regulatory changes. And as regulatory oversight continues to expand, the companies need to respond. FRTB, MiFID II, or SEC 613 are a few examples. The competitions from new fintech entrants is significant. I mean, if you take two sides of the house, one is the established bank, the other is a new fintech startup. There's a good amount of fight going on. Financial consumers have more choices than any other time in their history. Big data as a terminology, I mean, these days the amount of data being produced, big data word itself does not do justice. There are firms just sitting on large amount of petabytes of data, either for compliance purposes or because they think they can be able to identify actionable information. The resources are scarce at the same time. As more and more large enterprises make the move to cloud, finding the right skill set, right people to help you drive this change is very important. At the same time, obviously, the budgets are shrinking and declining revenues. Overall, it's driving towards cloud, and cloud is becoming the new normal. It's no longer if, when, it's more about how. Help me migrate much faster. Regardless of where you are in your practice or solution, governance, risk, and compliance are probably weighing heavy on your decisions. And financial institutions of all sizes, fintech startups, or hedge funds, or insurers, commercial banks, or global investment banks are working with AWS and AWS Partner Network to become more agile, cost-effective, customer-centric. With APN Partner Solution, you can solve these business challenges, improve your performance risk, and management capabilities. So we are seeing the adoption increasing. What are the different use cases that we see in the financial sector? In this case, I have a 4 high-level segregation. I mean, it's not the only way of segregating it. Retail commercial banking is one. Wealth management, private banking is the other. Capital markets, investment banking, the third, and insurance is the fourth. And there are different ways each enterprise takes their cloud journey. Talking about digital channels, most of the banks have a web presence, net banking. The move to cloud is actually enabling them to look at those web and digital properties and see either it's a lift and shift, or it could be re-engineering or re-architecture. Now, if you think those websites, when they were created, the device form factors were very few. But now there's a plethora of device form factors. So along with this migration to cloud, what's happening is changing those UI to be able to understand who is the device who is calling me. Is it a tablet? Is it a phone? Is it a desktop? And based on that, innovating it. The second workload that we see is analytics. I mean, it's never been easy to collect, store, digest, process, analyze large amount of data than it is on the cloud. The large big data that's being produced, social engineering, the sentiment analysis are some of the use cases. And the third, which we see, is the high performance computing. Could be grid workloads, it could be calculations, could be stress tests, and one of the topics for today is the AML, anti-money laundering, and fraud detection. Being able to burst into cloud for your additional computing needs is another workload. Last but not the least is the infrastructure-oriented workloads. Many of the large enterprises starts with a dev and test just to play with it. Sometimes a DR, cybersecurity. In all the patterns of cloud adoption, usually cost saving is the conversation starter. But then soon it becomes like cost savings, elasticity is definitely advantages. But the key advantages that we gain is being agile, being nimble, being able to respond to changing needs much faster. At this moment, I'm going to hand over to Micah Wilbrand, Director of NICE Actimize, to go over the solutions.
Thank you, Amit. Just want to briefly introduce myself. As Amit had said, my name is Micah Wilbrand, and I'm the Director of the Anti-Bribery and Corruption Solutions here at NICE Actimize. What we'll be doing for the next 20 or so minutes, we'll be discussing how NICE Actimize has partnered with AWS to bring our industry-leading solutions into the marketplace and available via the cloud. On what we're terming both for internal and external compliance based on AWS. And we're very pleased to be partnering with AWS as part of this venture and bringing out our solutions to market. For everyone that's on the call, just want to give a brief overview on what NICE Actimize is and who we are. As you can see on the screen, we look at the market in 3 to 4 different ways in terms of how we're positioned. Currently, NICE Actimize is roughly a 20-year-old company with our heritage based in the anti-money laundering space. As you can see there on the left, we specialize, and we'll be talking about this later, around transaction monitoring, customer due diligence, watchlist filtering, and bribery and corruption. And that's what we'll be covering as part of the webinar today. The other 2 areas that we focus on here at Actimize is around fraud detection, as well as financial market compliance. These 3 business areas that we have are then pinned by what we call our risk case management. And this is an industry-leading case management software built specifically for financial crime. Today, NICE Actimize currently has over 300 global customers, primarily financial institutions spread around the world, around 2,000 employees, and 5 R&D labs that are spread across the world. as part of our solutions that we talk about and as part of our customer base, as you can see here, throughout the world, we work with 29 or 24 of the top 25 banks globally. All of the top 10 investment banks as well. In terms of deployments, we have over 360 deployments of our software. One of the things that we're very excited about working with Amazon is that if you've heard of Actimize in the past, primarily what you have interacted with us is really around having an on-premise software solution. And that's what we've specialized over the past 20 years. But what Amazon is bringing us here at Actimize is the ability to offer these industry-leading solutions into the cloud. And as Amit had mentioned earlier, one of the great advantages that we have from a cloud-based solution is that it really helps from a cost perspective. When you have an on-premise software solution, typically you're talking, high 7 or even 8-figure types of deals, whereas with Amazon and having our ability to offer in the cloud, we can offer a substantially lower cost of entry and point of entry into the market. And that's why we're very excited is that you will be able to leverage installations that are in the top banks globally, but at a price point which is more attuned to the market that we're speaking with today. And finally, you can kind of see some of the financial institutions that we work with around the world. As we mentioned, primarily we work with what we term the tier 1 banks, the largest banks in the world, the HSBCs, Citis, Mizuhos, Fifth Thirds. But also we work with smaller banks. So you can see First Tech as a customer, Connecta, Plains Capital, and Sunrise, as well as emerging. And we work with payment service providers, MSBs, and other types. And today, it's not been officially announced, but we actually signed our first blockchain and Bitcoin type company today. That is the market first and putting out a Bitcoin payment solution as well. So, we do operate and work with lots of different kinds of customers out there in the marketplace. So now I want to move next into describing what we do. So as I mentioned before, we are working with Amazon on what we call both internal and external controls. What we're going to talk about first is the external, and that is what we call our AML SaaS Essentials platform. And what these external controls are really looking at is really that anti-money laundering solution set. And when we talk about anti-money laundering and, you talk about NICE Actimize in this space, this is where we have an immense amount of experience. As you can see on the right, Risk Tech, which is a very prominent name and analyst out there in the financial crime area, did a, quadrant analysis to look at the biggest providers out there and where they're at in terms of potential and completeness of the offering. And as you can see, Actimize is located at the top right in that marketplace. And as you can see, we're getting that kind of confirmation from the analysts out there in the market that we have the best of breed solutions and the most completeness of the offering as we go forward. As we've mentioned before, we have hundreds of clients that utilize our software. And depend on us that we develop and bring to market the best solutions as well. But also they go to us because of our brand and our reputation with regulators. We have a team of subject matter experts and former regulators here at Actimize that we actually meet regularly with global regulators from the OCC, the FCA in the UK, HKMA in Hong Kong, Canadian, and other regulators where we do two things. One is we actually demo our products to these regulators to show them what we're doing. And then second, we actually get some feedback from the regulators on where they're seeing some problems in the market and where they're tending to put their focus in the future. And so that gives us a really good way to help influence our roadmap in terms of delivery of the products that we go out. And one of the main things that we're hearing is, from regulators and, as you see in a lot of the smaller fintech type companies that Amit talked about, is there's a lot of push around analytics. And so, we have multiple types of analytics from detection to case management and whatnot. But, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but our sophistication in analytics allow you to do not only profiling and out-of-the-box rules, but also statistical-based analysis with one of the most in-depth analytics packages that are out there in the market. We've had a statistical artificial intelligence software solution in the market for over 10 years, protecting these top banks with our transaction monitoring software. So it's really important, and people are really dependent on helping us identify sort of the hidden threats within their financial institution. The other is with our case management, and really, tackling one of the other issues that plagues financial institutions, which is around false positives. And what our case management software can do through the use of sophisticated workflow, as well as our beginning to push robotics out there to help minimize, typical rote types of activities for case management and investigators, we're able to really lower the amount of false positives that are being worked and the amount of time spent on that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, the real advantage that comes with working with Amazon. Our service is now easy and quick to implement. We can get up and running in 90 days with our AML software. So, if you do decide to move ahead with Actimize on the Amazon platform, within a quarter, you can have your institution being protected by us, within just a couple months. And so it's really, cut down on the cost as well as the time of deployment as well. So what do we have when we talk about our solution? So what we view is we break it into 5 different areas. And I'll kind of talk about these briefly as I go through. What I'll talk about first is the prime part of the AML solution set, which is our suspicious activity monitoring. That is the purple wedge down at the bottom of the screen. This is what Actimize is most well known for in the AML area, our SAM product. This product basically is the analytics engine that is monitoring all of your financial transactions occurring from your customer base within the financial institution. So we're looking at all your debit, wire, stock, cash, savings, and wires, and other types of transactions coming through for suspicious activity. So we do this with a series of out-of-the-box rules, which regulators require, and we actually have the largest library of rule set of any competitor out in the financial crime software space. We have nearly 250 of these rules that you can leverage within your financial institution. But then we also have what we talked about, that very sophisticated analytical artificial intelligence, which we term the security blanket. A security blanket, again, is a very prominent use of our analytical tools in the financial institutions to detect hidden risks. So, and this is what, when we work with regulators, when we work with financial institutions, this is one of the key elements that you'll get access to as part of this. And what that really does is when you talk about financial crime and we talk about the out-of-the-box rules, these are very well-known types of rules like structuring and things like that. But what our security blanket does is it really looks for the hidden risks. These are the developing type of solutions and the developing types of typologies that we see for financial crime. And it's able to detect this earlier and quicker than anyone else in the market. And this has been a real advantage for financial institutions in their fight against financial crime globally. So that's the core underpinning of our essential suite that we have out on Amazon today. The next one is what we'll talk about is the watch list filtering. That's the green wedge in the top left. There's a lot of these out in the market, and basically this is your sanction and PEP screening engine. So this is where we take the data from a third-party data provider such as a Dow Jones, LexisNexis, Thomson Reuters, and we're comparing your customer list to look for sanctions and politically exposed people from around the world. Again, this is integrated into our risk case management, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that is part of that other requirement that you have from regulators to ensure that you're protecting and screening your customer base for these risks. The other one is then the CDD suite. That's the blue wedge. What the CDD suite, it gives you a really powerful customer onboarding tool for onboarding and actually offboarding, if you choose to, your entire customer set, from individuals to corporates, organizations, and even correspondent banking relationships that you may have. This does this through sophisticated onboarding technology where you can actually have decision tree type logic for onboarding to handle sophisticated onboarding to ensure that you gather beneficial ownership documentation, business licenses, and whatnot based on the type of entity that you're onboarding. That's then put into a very powerful risk rating engine. And what we do is we take all the data that you get from the entities and we create a risk, so be it high, medium, and low, or any kind of degree that you have in between. That then is then fed into the Suspicious Activity Monitoring Program, SAM, to determine your risks that go forward and help determine your thresholds on where you're going to alert. So all of these products work really closely together to ensure that you are both analyzing both behavioral and financial activity from your customer base. Then the final thing that we see in the yellow and the pink wedges there are around reporting. One of the most advantageous things we have outside of the analytics that we talk about is the ability to do reporting, from currency transaction reports to suspicious activity reports. We have automated electronic filing with United States regulators and other foreign jurisdictions like Canada and the UK, where we're able to automatically aggregate your information after an investigation's been completed and you need to report that information to a regulator. We can then auto-populate that into a form and electronically file that into FinCEN or other regulators around the world, really cutting down on a significant amount of time and energy that's spent pulling these reports together. And again, you're able to get all of this information through our offering on Amazon Web Services today, and it's been a really powerful tool for it. So you're able to really centralize all of your processes into a suite, as well as knitting together and having an enterprise view of all your risk that's in there. So it's been a very powerful tool for a lot of our customers that have decided to move ahead with it. And so as we talked about in terms of how we work, basically we have a very simplified data integration. We utilize lots of different types of analytics to detect anomalous activity. We then consolidate those alerts, and we'll talk a little bit about case management in a minute to help enhance that workflow and make it easier, but then also that resolution, the ability to close off these cases or send them on to government agencies for next steps. And so then you have that feedback loop that we talk about. So as part of the system over time is going to start to learn and better understand your business as you go forward. So it has self-learning capabilities in that feedback loop. As we've kind of spoken about, kind of the 5 kind of quick points around what our Essentials product does to help manage those external controls. Is from the SAM product, you get a really robust set of analytics and that ability to prioritize alerts that's coming through. The case management software, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it really standardizes that workflow and that ability to do reporting to the government agencies. Our onboarding with our CDD suite and our WLF solution allows you to have a very simplified forms process where you're capturing all the information and all the documentation with pre-configured workflows. And so that makes it easier for your account representatives when they're working with corporate and individual customers to get them on. And then with just that cloud delivery and SaaS orientation, really you can do this quick and easy. It can be up and running in 90 days at a very significant reduction in cost as opposed to an on-premise solution. So now I'm going to talk about the other part that we're working with Amazon and what we term the internal controls. So a lot of financial institutions, traditionally we've been really looking at the external and the monitoring of the customer base. But now we're starting to see a push talking about internal controls and really looking at the internal risk posed by employees, but also your vendors. So the Wolfsburg Group has put out guidance around what financial institutions should be doing to monitoring their internal controls. And we've actually seen a lot of instances in the press around financial institutions that are getting in trouble for actually allowing bribes and corrupt payments to go through their systems. And often this is done with the help of financial institution employees. So it's really important that you are monitoring your employees and your vendor relationships as well to ensure that you are not aiding and abetting in bribery and corruption. And so what our solution does here is it allows you, again, from a very simplified case management perspective, to use a cloud-based analytics system and really automate that process for it in terms of your audits and your reporting to there. Again, as we spoke about, one of the reasons that we're seeing a focus on this is the push around escalating fines for corporates and financial institutions around the world. In Brazil, we've had 2 companies that have been fined over $3 billion this year. One is Odebrecht for anti-bribery and corruption. The other is a company called JBS, which had actually been bribing food officials to allow spoiled meat to be sold around the world. So we've seen that come through, but we've also seen other financial institutions globally be fined for bribery and corruption concerns for their use of hiring wealthy individuals' children to influence the ability of getting those deposits. But on the other hand, we're also seeing, heads of state as well as massive corporations being put on guard and people being arrested and actually put in jail. The head of Samsung in South Korea has been arrested and put in jail for over 5 years. To put this in a more North American context, this would be similar to Tim Cook at Apple being arrested and put in jail for bribery and corruption. So we're seeing a really massive push by regulators around the world looking at this issue around bribery and corruption, and financial institutions are being pulled into the center of a lot of these cases. And so the way our system works for that monitoring of your employees, it's in a very similar way to what our transaction monitoring system is doing. What we're looking there is we're looking at travel and expense, we're looking at procurement data, and we're also looking at accounts receivables coming in. So we're getting that information in. We have a set of rules that look at it, as well as sophisticated, again, analytics that are helping you find those hidden risks as well. And they go through, and again, in a similar way, we find the detection, we find the risks, and then we flow that up to an analyst within that same case management system so they can work that alert and decide what the best next step is for that situation that is being handled. And again, we have interactive learning that's going on to make that system smarter. So as you do these tasks over time, the system learns it, and so they learn what's going on, and then you're not having to spend as much time because the system is learning the root tasks that they can move on from there. So we're going to talk real quick the next couple slides around the case management system and how that really looks when you get a detection from both your customer base or your employee and vendors, and what that looks like, because we're leveraging that same powerful case management software. And so when we're doing scenario-based detection, so we're looking at alerts from financial activity coming through or financial payments, on here you can see what we call our workbench. And this is a snapshot from our workbench. And here you can it presents lots of information through the consolidation of these alerts. So you might have one alert that comes through, but it doesn't necessarily breach a threshold. But what happens is if we see multiple alerts coming through around suspicious activity, it may finally breach that level that would key an investigator to work that alert. And you can see that within this situation, we have roughly 7 alerts that have finally pushed it back the level. And a lot of this is related to transactions that look like structuring. And each transaction is scored and then it's aggregated up. But then also we allow for suspicious activity, suspicious locations that are coming through, or non-obvious locations that come through. Because one of the things as you're doing at the onboarding is you're asking your customer, where do you expect money to come in, or where do you expect to be sending money? And if they don't have Bolivia on their list, maybe they're only doing payments to Western Europe and maybe Latin America or Canada, and then all of a sudden you're seeing payments from South America, Africa, and Asia, that's going to bring up a risk related to it because it's not matching the behavior that you're asking. And so you're starting to see that activity come through. And so we aggregate that information to you in a simple and easily ready to view scenario snapshot for your investigators. Secondly, we can help give that alert more context through graphical interfaces of how alerts are coming through, and also linking together party relationships. So you're looking through your entities, you're seeing how these payments are going through, so not just having that view of just line items saying this is how the transactions went through, is you can actually get a graphical representation of how these alerts relate to everyone. This also feeds back into our customer due diligence area, where we can have parties showing ultimate beneficial ownership and how they all link together to give you a better view of how parties are related together. So again, it gives you multiple different ways to really look at an alert and really investigate it more thoroughly as you're going through. And then finally, as we talked about, you're able to, if you do determine that this is an alert that you do need to send off to the regulators, we are able to move it through to the workflow And you can see here, this is an example of a STAR report that is being filed to FinCEN. You're able to auto-populate a lot of the reasons. You're able to add additional information in part of the narrative to give explanation behind what's going on. But then the final thing is, you are populating in this information going through on the information FinCEN asks you to send. But the other final point is you have a full audit trail of all the activity that's occurred up into that point. So if FinCEN comes back and requests additional information, if your board of directors wants additional information, you have that full audit trail that's able to be brought back, complementing what you have and why you made the decision that you did. And so, as we, look to wrap this up and I move it back to Amit, finally, one of the reasons that, financial institutions are turning to SaaS, a lot of it is, the cost savings. It has a significant cost savings over the on-premise. But the other, and Amit's going to discuss this too, is the security. Working with Amazon, you have that confidence that it's a secure solution. We've been involved in cloud-based solutions for a long time, and always security, especially private cloud or somewhere else, there are always concerns around data privacy and other data security questions around hacking and whatnot. And with Amazon working with us, we have there's a lot more confidence in ensuring that they're there. And then finally, one of the other reasons is we're actually not only on smaller or regional banks, now we're seeing the biggest banks turn to more cloud solutions as well, and this hybrid approach of both a cloud and on-premise solution. And so one of the great advantages from Actimize is that you're able to leverage both of that, and that's what we've seen from a lot of customers out there that are moving ahead with that. And then finally, just on the benefits, and here before I put it off to Amit, what we're able to do with AWS is, reach a lot of these markets, and especially the people that are on the call today, and really be able to work with you on that and have it, coming out to market. And some of the customers that are now on the solution, have, as we said, have been up very rapidly and been able to leverage everything and really work with a battle-tested, really fully compliant solution out there in the market. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Amit, and he's going to talk a little bit more around the advantages of Amazon and sort of, the cloud-based solution that AWS is offering us.
Thank you. Thanks, Micah. Really appreciate it. So I want to take it from where Micah left. The 4 pillars that were mentioned: security, scalability, cost savings, and competitiveness. So NICE Actimize solution, ABC AML, built on top of AWS. It extends the AWS environment. Now, it leverages these features from the AWS environment. Let's go each pillars one by one at a high level. Security at AWS is job zero. I'm sure you've heard this many times, but it really is, and it starts with the shared responsibility model. And what it essentially means is wherever the control is, that person or that team is responsible for security. If you see, the bottom component is what AWS is responsible for. Basically, the global infrastructure, the regions, the availability zones, the pop-up edge locations, and the foundational services, the compute, the storage, the database, and networking. So if you take from the stack perspective, from a physical security of data centers up until the virtualization hypervisor stack, AWS is kind of the responsible. Once you bring in onto the cloud in your virtual network environment, you create EC2 instances or you bring in solutions. Whatever you bring in as into the AWS environment, you are responsible for maintaining the security of those. The data that you bring in, encryption for them, the network configuration that you do, the responsibility goes onto your applications and your teams. But we do provide services for each of the areas. Before I jump onto services, the AWS has certifications, and it starts with at the top level, the SOC 1, 2, 3 certification. We have plethora of industry recognized certifications. In the interest of time, just the ISO 9001 information security, the PCI DSS, the FedRAMP, and the international alignment and frameworks like the IT Rutgers. Built on top of the strong compliance foundation is NICE Actimize. If you see, the AWS security does not cater, right? A guy in a dorm in a college versus a large enterprise, they both get the same set of compliance foundation and same set of security controls. When you bring in an application or a solution, in this case, NICE Actimize has leveraged the AWS services. So let's quickly move around different sections. Identity and action Access management, basically the authentication and the authorization. Who gets access and who can do what? As you see, the AML and the ABC have a significant amount of data that is very sensitive. So it is very important to keep that control. So the Actimize solution leverages the IAM, the services. It supports the standard policy-based authorizations. For detective controls, there is a cloud trail service which you can use for forensic purposes also, like, hey, who called this particular API when? You could use that. The solutions that you bring in and the network security, it's kind of similar to what you do in your on-premises data center. You do network segregation, and the same set of features are available with the AWS services. The data protection, very, very important. Based on the data classification, HBI, MBI, PII, you map it to a different set of security controls. Some places you go more, some places you go less. And use the AWS KMS, Key Management Service. You bring in your own keys or leverage the AWS server-side keys from KMS. Optimize change management. Again, you want to know what's there in your cloud environment. Like in on-premises world, you want to know what's there. Some places we see CMDB, the Configuration Management Database. And on the cloud, you get AWS config rules that helps you understand what's your footprint. You can also do a very, very smart automations in terms of, hey, all my resources, I want to have them tagged in a particular order. I want to segregate them. I want to have a billing structure this way. So you could use that. The change management is easier that way. Now, automate security function. It's very critical. If you take analogy like on-prem, when you create a data center, you first create data center and then you think of, okay, who gets access to what? Whereas in the cloud, you actually you think through the access controls first, and then you create your VPC or the landing zone environment. You can automate end-to-end. So basically, when you're creating, let's say, a VPC or solution that you want to host, you have the ability to actually have destroy and recreate capability. So that's the complete end-to-end security automation. Other than those, obviously, there is a significant other set of services. I do want to mention a couple here. One is the DDoS shield protection. That's useful to guard against the distributed denial of service. And at the bottom right is the AWS Artifact. It's a portal where you can log in and see the SOC certifications and other compliance certifications. Now, security innovation. I mean, one is saying that, hey, we're top on the security, but second is actually showing it with data. If you see the last 6-7 years of our released services and features, out of 100%, 39% of those services and features were security and compliance specific. And we work with NICE Actimize to see their roadmap, and the actual input to these services is coming from customers like NICE Actimize and partners. So those input, 90 to 95% of our roadmap comes from partners like NICE Actimize, and that's how the newer innovations in the security and compliance services is happening. Scalability, the other component. So ingrained hybrid support. So the NICE Actimize solution can connect to the bank's data sources and entities via the cloud or via their on-prem also, leveraging the AWS VPN or Direct Connect to support the hybrid-based architecture. Auto scaling and infrastructure as code. This is critical. I mean, in cloud, based on your request patterns, you can scale up or scale down and pay for what is being leveraged. Operational maturity. The size of AWS global infrastructure, I mean, there are reports you can see that it's in combination of other cloud providers is many times. Being able to manage the operational and keep the operational efficiency shows the operational maturity of AWS platform. The last here, global footprint. So if tomorrow, if you want to replicate the same solution from one region to other, it's just a matter of minutes. You'll be able to go to different regions. At the last 16 regions, at this moment, 44 availability zones and 74 edge locations. And it's growing. We are continuously innovating in that area. Now, once you get a solution onto the cloud, you leverage from the economics of scale, right? And the cost savings is given back. If you see AWS, it has reduced its prices 62 times since the start. And that actually goes to the end customers also. The services like Trusted Advisor, which can go into AWS environment and come back with like, hey, these are the resources, you're not utilizing them properly, maybe you want to shut them down. So we want to make sure that customers get the value out of their AWS environment. And then there are additional savings programs for the partners or the discount plans and credits. The competitiveness summary is basically, I would say, the pace of innovation. Last 5 years, you can see from 80 to 160 to 280 to 516 to 722 to 1017. The services and features are growing by leaps and bounds, and we're not stopping there. At a high level, that's the ecosystem of the services, and different sections from management, analytics, dev tools, artificial intelligence, IoT, mobile, and the services are growing. Last but not the least, the Actimize solution has its own rules engine, but they're looking to explore the AWS machine learning and artificial intelligence. We have the plethora of SDKs from the image recognition, the machine learning, the Poly, which can do text-to-speech, Lex, which can do the natural language understanding. That's the one that powers Alexa. And a deep learning AMI, you could use the MXNet framework or the TensorFlow. That's the AWS advantages. And now we want to go into the Q&A section. Micah, maybe you can take this one. The question is there a way for the solution to aggregate our risk in one place to show management or a regulator when they ask?
Thank you, Amit. Yes. So the way that our case management software works is that we are able to bring that information into a centralized area for the compliance department to look at, and then they can run various reports from that based on what regulators or your board is looking for. We also have, and that's on a standard day-to-day kind of working. We also have a tool that we call DART, which allows you to do requests into the system and specific queries. So if you have a regulator asking a specific question around maybe transactions related to your private wealth area on a certain date, you can write this in a query, and you can pull all that information back for them to review as well. So you have two different ways that can do it. One is standardized reporting and an aggregation of information that will support probably 85 to 90% of all your reporting requirements that you're asked for. And then we have that DART tool, which can handle the other 10 to 15% for the ad hoc reporting that you get, or maybe those last-minute questions that you get from the board to put in management packs at the end of a quarter or a year.
Great. Thanks, Micah. And there is an ask around, give me a summary of financial services partner ecosystem. I mean, AWS has a rapidly growing partner ecosystem. If you see it mainly from category-wise, there is ISVs and there are system integrators. ISVs are more around the hosted or integrated with AWS Cloud. From a financial services perspective, risk management, you've seen the NICE Actimize. We have there are others like FICO, core systems. We have partners like Guidewire, Calypso. From a data management perspective, ISS Market, and it's growing. And it's basically the partner program which provides technical, business, and marketing support for the AWS partner ecosystem. I hope that summarizes here. How clients are delivering files to the cloud? Micah, how the actual end clients are delivering the files to the cloud?
Yes, so we do this through multiple ways, and most of the solutions, it's done, especially on transaction monitoring, it's done via automated batching. With that internal controls solution that we talked about, the anti-bribery and corruption, we typically take an automated batch routine from your ERP system. So if you have an Oracle or an SAP or a JD Edwards type accounting system for your ERP, we would be pulling the data from there and uploading it via automation tools offered by AWS, or you can actually put it up manually if you wish. On the external controls around customer files, typically, again, we can set up an automated routine via the Amazon automation platform that enables it via batching. That would be taken from your core banking systems. So there are lots of core banking systems out there. So you would be able to auto-populate, you'd be able to populate that data into the system via that way. We also, when you're doing either the WLF or the watch list screening or the customer due diligence, they operate in a similar type of manner. So, most of the solutions are done via batch uploads, via secure FTP.
Thanks, Micah. The next one, probably, this is again going to your end. Are there implementation templates, best practices, documents for Actimize solution on AWS?
Yes, there are. So we have gone with, as we talked about, we've done hundreds of implementations. As part of the cloud solution and as part of the way that we're able to get individuals up and running so quickly is we do have standardized implementations and standardized workflows to get you up and running. The other thing we do is that we also train you on the use of the system so you can then begin customizing that solution over time to make it more complementary to your financial institution or your organization as you move forward. The other thing we can offer, again, as I mentioned, we do have a series of subject matter experts and former regulators on staff, which are able to help consult with you on a project basis to establish, if you have a very unique problem that we don't have an existing customized workflow or an existing workflow that they can help you define what that should look like and what the regulators are looking for. So we offer both out of the box standardized workflows as well as that ability to customize it.
Great. Okay, so the next one again is Actimize available as a service or is it hosted as a website? Maybe the different solutions have different implementation, but general ask, like, is it available as a service or is it hosted as a website?
I believe the question, to make sure that I have it correct, we are offering it as a service. It's not a website to allow one-off kind of searches. I will say if you do a specific implementation of our watch list screening product for sanctions and PEPs, we do have the ability to do one-off checks, but again, that would be on Amazon and that would be offered as a service or as a service as well. So we don't offer it as just kind of a portal site that you can come in and do it. You would be implementing that as a service.
Okay, great. For other set of questions, we will be reaching out to you via email. Thank you everyone for attending and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you everyone.